let's kick off. Hi. Yes, please feel free to use the chat. So, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight at our July Alumni Q&A webinar for 2026. This series dives into real stories and the challenges and the wins from classrooms, straight from those who've lived it. So I'd like to welcome Daniel and Kate to the call tonight, two alum who will be answering your questions. My name's Rebecca. I am also an alum, all the way back in the very first cohort of TFA back in 2010. I currently work as a teaching and leadership coach at TFA and a regional manager. So I get to spend lots of time with current associates, working with schools and doing lots of teaching, coaching. Before I get started any further, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm joining from, which is Bunurong country down in Victoria, down on what is commonly known as the Mornington Peninsula coast. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present and extend my welcome to the countries that you are joining from today. I would like to also pay my respects to any First Nations people who are on the call tonight. I acknowledge the First Nations' continuing custodianship, care, and sovereignty over the country that we live on. Sovereignty was never ceded, always was, and always will be First Nations people's country. If you would like to use the chat function, it would be wonderful to hear from the lands that you're on. So throw in the land that you are coming from tonight, and we will get started into some of the more formalities. Give me a moment as I check the chat. Lovely. Thank you. Okay, so here's what to expect from the next 45 minutes or so. We'll kick off with a few quick intros from Daniel and Kate, and then we'll dive into a few questions that we've prepared before opening up to you as a live Q&A. At any time throughout the chat, in response to Kate and Dan's answers, please feel free to use the Q&A box to throw any questions, queries, comments. I'll be keeping an eye on it as much as I can. And yes, the session is also being recorded, so please do note that. So if you're new to TFA, we're a non-for-profit that work closely with schools to make sure and attempt to close the education gap. We do this by hopefully placing talented people into classrooms that serve the communities that we work in to support students to become fabulous people with lots and lots of opportunities. Our role at TFA is to support teachers in their early career to make sure that they not only become excellent classroom teachers, but also develop a range of leadership skills from being a leader in the classroom to potentially other roles in schools. Since 2010, we've had over 1,700 associates in 300 schools across the country and counting. So I started in 2010. It was a Julia Gillard initiative that I saw on the news at the time. So in partnership with our then CEO, Melody, I was very excited to apply for TFA and very, very privileged to get in. I worked in a school out in Melbourne's inner west in St Albans, if anybody knows that, and really, really enjoyed my time doing my placement there across the 2 years. I'm predominantly an English teacher, taught in Melbourne's west for a decade, and then stopped to have a few kids along the way, and am now currently doing coaching at TFA, which is very, very rewarding and a great privilege to work with associates as they enter into this gorgeous profession. I'll hand it over to Dan. Would you like to give us a quick spill about where you've come from and who you are?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Hi everyone. Call me DJ, please, if you'd rather. I know I do. I guess I could tell you that I joined TFA I'm originally from Sydney. I got into the program and I'm currently teaching. Well, obviously just finished it last year as the 2024 cohort here in WA, and I am teaching at Eaton Community College in the Bunbury region, which is about 2 hours south of Perth. I originally before TFA, I was working in maritime and marine science sector, predominantly in conservation diving and tourism up in Queensland, actually on the Great Barrier Reef. And I guess the reason why I changed my career outlook was I was actually looking for something that had a little bit more impact on people that I could actually pass that impact on to in a room. I think the work that I was doing before TFA probably wasn't hitting or scratching the itch enough for me about how I'm actually, passing on knowledge or I guess helping people develop, become better, people in what they're doing, helping teenagers figure out what they're trying to get out of in the world or at school, I think has been really, really huge for my own purpose-driven goals of life. And my old job just wasn't cutting that. And I thought I need to look for something better. And then I actually had my old history teacher who I stayed in contact with, funnily enough, suggest to me that you should look at this thing called TFA. And here I am, I suppose. So 3 years on, or in my third year of teaching, and still at the school that I was placed in, and really loving it. So that's me.
Fabulous, DJ. Thank you.
No worries.
Lovely. Kate, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Kate. So I, like DJ, also just finished the program last year. I was actually placed in WA as well. So DJ and I have spent quite a bit of time together in the last couple of years. But I'm originally from Toowoomba in Queensland. Grew up here, went like really big into agriculture, farming, and originally pursued a career in that after school. So after school, went and studied ag, went and worked in agricultural consulting, agricultural research mostly, those sort of areas. But I always sort of had in the back of my mind that maybe teaching would be my next sort of career opportunity potentially. And it was while I was working in ag consulting that I kind of came up with this like little trilogy, I guess, of things that make me tick, and they were cows. Like I love my cows. I've got a few Scottish Highlanders. Dancing. I'm also a big line dancer, and that's developed into building community, and then also working with children. And so sort of like I took a year off in that period of time and went line dancing around Australia. And it was like on that trip, we were working with a lot of schools. I was asking a lot of teachers how they came into teaching. And it was at one school in Alice Springs where I ran into a teacher who'd done TFA, and she was like, if you really want to do teaching, I recommend this program. It's really intense, but it's really like sets you up for your like teaching career long term and sort of leadership in that space. And so that kind of stuck with me. And then finished the road trip, went back into working in ag, and was like, I really enjoy this, but it's just not fulfilling me how I would like it to be. I'd also been spending a bit of time in the classroom, sort of doing incursions and excursions. And I was like, I think the classroom's where I want to be. So, to put my application in, and here I am. So I was placed at a school 2 hours east of Perth, a little town called Cunderdin, at their ag college there. So I was teaching year 11 and 12s, animal science and plant science mostly. And that was a really great experience. I was the first and only TFA associate to be placed there at that point in time. And then having finished the course, I've moved back to Queensland, and I'm now actually teaching at my old high school. I'm still teaching ag, and I've jumped over to the dark side. I'm in the Catholic private independent sector now, but I think the process of going through TFA is really sort of set me up for different school environments.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kate. And we've got someone in the chat that said that they also used to work in the rural and agribusiness industry across.
There you go.
Wonderful. So if I was to ask both of you, can you recall the moment that you decided to join TFA and what it was particularly about TFA that made you want to join this program?
Shall I take this one first again, Kate?
You go
Happy with
first.
that.
Yeah.
I had sort of done a little bit of feeling the water, went to a webinar myself, had been thinking about what other roles I might want to pursue in the current industry that I was in. And as I mentioned actually before that, I'd had a history, it was my modern history teacher who, just to give you a bit of an idea of like have lasting impact as a teacher, like still in my late 20s was helping me make good choices and have a positive impact on my life and my outcomes. She recommended to me that I look at this TFA thing, and I did. I went to webinars and I sort of was umming and ahhing. And I guess having a really, long and arduous reflection on what I want to be doing in the next, 10, 20, 30 years of my life. And I realized that, from the old, some of the older jobs that I worked before, the current one that I was in at that time, which was conservation diving, I'd done a lot of science communication. And I don't think I mentioned this, but I'm working as a science teacher at Eaton. So I also have, so I teach general junior science and then also focus on marine and maritime studies with my year 11 and 12 general classes. I guess I was sort of really, really noticed that I used to get really energized when I had anything to do with actually having one-on-one like dialogue and contact with tourism passengers on the boats I worked on when I was communicating the science to them. So having those like aha moments and getting people really excited about science was something that I noticed was never hard for me to do. It always came very easily, and I always got a lot of joy out of that. And so I thought that's something that I should be looking for. I had spoken to my modern history teacher who had said, you should try this TFA thing. You'd be a great teacher. I think she actually mentioned as well, as like, we just need more male teachers as well. And, X, Y, Z. And she was giving me all these reasons. And so I looked into it. I went to a webinar. And then I think when I really was looking through the application process and just understanding what it was that TFA is trying to do, coming from a place of privilege in my upbringing, I thought like, wow, this is a really cool way to actually take my wonderfully, privileged situation in life and use it for good in places where people don't have the sort of resources or outcomes that I was given based on, my postcode and my upbringing, which I think is a big part of the TFA mission statement is, not have your postcode determine your educational outcomes. So that was really the driver for me when I thought, yeah, I have a position now where I can take what I have and use it for good for other people that don't have as much or not as fortunate as myself.
Fantastic. DJ, I heard a few things coming through there. Kate, you might have similar, that knowing that you had a skill set that could be useful to others, knowing that it was going to be a challenge, but that there's something in the challenge that is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You maybe identify that there's a teacher in you somewhere, similar for you, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a person who absolutely loves a challenge, and I think I thrive on being challenged and sort of pushed and stretched in my ability. And I think I was also kind of looking for that a little bit too when I came across TFA. I think I was looking to work with young people more. I think that I wanted to work in educating young people more about agriculture in particular. It's quite a divide, I think, generally in agriculture, that there's a bit of a divide, I guess, between how food is produced and then how it ends up on your table, and sort of, meeting the divide between how we can, like, I guess, building literacy around food production and the importance of agriculture on a broader scale. And so I've always sort of had this bit of a vision that I wanted to make agriculture the best industry that it could be. And even if that like took, one person understanding, that, eggs came from chickens and that sort of thing, I was like, maybe I can do that. And I think the fundamentals of that starts in the classroom. It starts with young people where, they're pliable and eager to learn and want to know new things. And I've been very lucky in the schools that I've been in that they've also had really strong agricultural programs, and we've had access to a farm and animals and those sort of things. And so the the connection between being able to, I'm probably jumping ahead here, but the connection between being able to tell someone something and then, put it into real life has been quite accessible in the schools that I've taught in, which is great. But I think, when I was first thinking about applying and all that sort of stuff, I think it was really like I wanted a challenge. I wanted to try something new. I wanted to work with young people. And TFA sort of just like gave the opportunity to do all those things. And I think having also studied previously, I think you get an appreciation that the best learning happens when you're on the job, and TFA provided this opportunity to get the degree, all that sort of thing, but also to put those skills into practice as you're doing it.
Okay, that was a very big motivator for me as well. I wanted to be thrown straight in and start working with young people. I love the idea of doing the study alongside the practical element of actually learning the tools of the trade when it came to being a teacher. And for me, I was very driven by the idea around equity, of not just wanting to work in education, but wanting to work in education in order to make sure that, the type of school you go to doesn't determine the opportunities that you get given. That's 16 years ago, and it's still as much of a problem, if not still a growing divide between those who can pay for education and those that, may choose their local school up the road and feel loyal and honoured to that. And I want those families to be rewarded by having shit hot teachers, really, in those classrooms. So thank you to DJ and Kate for being those teachers, and so great for me to hear that you really got a lot out of those first 2 years. Being in the classroom, and so great that you are still in the classroom, hopefully for years to come. I'm going to have a quick moment and just check the chat. Kelly, my tech whiz, I can't see the Q&A very well. For some reason, the questions aren't coming up. So I'm going to look in the general chat and see what questions we've got coming through that we might want to pause on. Lovely. Okay. I might throw this one to both of you. This is a question around when you're doing the leadership development program, how did you balance, workload, life load, study? A little bit on that.
Kate, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. It is hard. I think going through the program, you've got to prioritize. You've got to prioritize yourself through it as well, because you can only show up for your students if you also show up for yourself. I probably learnt that lesson the hard way sometimes, in that even sometimes you just got to give yourself, say, Sunday, or like last year I got really into giving myself a Tuesday night, because I was like, had other commitments other nights and different things going on. So Tuesday night was my low teaching day. It was like half of it was my study day. And I would just sit on the couch and journal and watch movies and do stuff that I wanted to do on a Tuesday night, to sort of give myself that bit of internal peace to then be able to show up for my students. I get to think for the rest of the week. It is really challenging. I had like notes and diaries everywhere, and you've got to also be able to communicate with your, I think, leadership team on what you have going on, so that they can sort of sometimes help you manage your workload as well, and understand that you do have a lot on your plate at any particular time. So use your leadership team. Also use your TFA mentors as well, to help you sort of, if you need time out and those sort of things, and connect with the other people in your cohort. We were really lucky with our WA cohort. I think we all communicated really well. We all had really like big issues probably at similar times, and were able to sort of catch up and talk to each other, and that sort of thing, which was really made it a lot easier as well, because you feel like you're part of something and you're not just out on your own.
Yeah. I can probably draw a few similarities there with what Kate mentioned about knowing when to be selfish with your time. So there's obviously, the work commitments that come first, because ultimately you're in this program to show up for kids and be their teacher and have impact. But then, of course, the degree must be met with a pass or higher. So I would say that from my own personal experience, it was all about making sure that I've dotted my I's and crossed my T's throughout the week for my workload. And then obviously on the weekends and in the afternoons when I had some extra dot time that the 0.8 workload gives you, is that I was in the library, albeit with good snacks and lots of coffee on board, to get that work done enough that I could be happy to walk away with it as a look. I've done enough to meet my the standards to get to pass that assessment, but I'm not sitting here being a perfectionist and critiquing it to the point where I burn myself out, because obviously that is a really serious reality that you might fall into if you work in that perfectionist sort of space with the master's work, the degree. So I would say that, it's making sure that you're at a comfortable level of like, this is going to pass, but I've also got to give myself the time to recharge. And I would take, normally the Sunday would be my, on the seventh day he rested. And that resting would normally look like going to get things that would fill my cup. So heading down the coast for surf, or being somewhere near the ocean, just doing something that, takes me away from, the full on experience that is TFA. But, keeping that Sunday sacred was helped me survive. So
yeah. And I would add
6 on 1 off kind of ratio for me. Dabbled with a bit of once I'd really gotten onto my feet with the first few terms, I think also through the midweek I would have a few social sport things happening too, just to sort of do little touch-ups, little fill here and there.
And I would add too, like TFA tends to attract, I think, probably high/overachievers. And so it is, particularly in the first little while, a bit of a mindset shift to go from this needs to be my best work to this needs to just be a pass. Because at the end of the day, you're there for the kids, you're there to be in the classroom. That's your priority over getting high distinctions on all of your assessments. So I think the priority is doing the best that you can in the classroom, and the assessments and stuff are still important. Absolutely, you've still got to do them, but they don't have to be necessarily the standard you would usually accept, which I know I struggled with, particularly in the first while.
It's like the reverse of like you sort of know where to sit. That's a little bit more realistic for the immense workload that you're taking on for those 24 odd months. Yeah, for sure.
I'm thinking back now 16 years of when I did the 2 years. Yes, it is a stretch. It is a challenge for most associates who do the program. The workload is a lot, because you're balancing the demands of the uni, but also you're balancing a newfound passion for wanting to be a teacher, and that passion can sometimes feel endless in the work that you could set yourself to do. And this is where you lean on the mentors and the experts around you in schools for extra support around, using resources that have already been created, so you're not recreating the wheel. And also, as you said, not just being able to step back from being perfectionist with uni work, but for me, I also had to step back from my ego in terms of I was doing something new, and even if I worked endlessly on it, I still just needed time in order to develop my practice, and I was still going to make mistakes and do them publicly in front of kids and families and other teachers. And I also had to give myself a little bit of grace around being new to something, and that actually helped me a lot with the load, because you can work tirelessly as a teacher, and part of being a teacher leader is learning sustainable practices and boundaries around when you need to turn off and be okay with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let me have a little look at some of the other great questions coming through in the chat. I'm going to pick this one because I think it's a great question. So thank you for this. And this is from Hold on, give me a moment. I've just lost it. This is from Alexandra, and the question is, can you talk a little bit about what it's like to teach modern teenagers in the classroom, positive experiences and challenging ones?
Is that yours?
Shh, go down. Sorry, I've got a little visitor.
That's quite all right.
That is quite all right.
Bye, darling.
modern teenagers. Shall I start us off here, Kate?
Yeah, go.
Yeah, the modern teenager, I think, has a lot of there's a lot happening and coming at them. You know, I think with obviously now that it's hopefully changing with a bit more of the law on social media and the age bands for that up to 16. The kids that we're going to be interacting now for at least the next couple of years have had plenty of exposure to an excessive amount of information. And I would say most people would agree quite a lot of misinformation that really, can confuse someone in that stage of life. I think what's really fascinating, particularly in a science classroom, is just how much of that nuance of what is good science versus good information around social dilemmas, political dilemmas, things about even anti-vaxxing and all those sorts, just, things that may be misinterpreted and consistently, having people that don't have rigorous scientific backgrounds, telling you something that's just not true as a teacher can be a bit jarring sometimes. But I think that, again, taking it from a place of, these kids just want to know things and make informed decisions, and trying to help them understand or find that horizon of what it means to actually get the information you need to make a properly informed or educated decision is a super, it's a full-on challenge, but it can be very rewarding when you do get those, call me, a little bit cliche, but those aha light bulb moments about it. And I think for me, that's really a big rewarding part of it all. The modern teenager, I think feeling like they know everything and being quite entitled is probably something that a lot of teachers would resonate with if you were to just throw a few words out into the ether about what you feel the modern teenager would be like in a room. But again, as I say, I think it comes from a place of just, they're just trying to figure out the world, and they've been given such an excessive amount of resource compared to what we did when we were younger. Well, me anyways, I feel it's just them trying to make sense of an extremely tech heavy and information heavy modern age, and being part of helping them figure that out is, as I say, the biggest challenge. One of the biggest challenges, but also when you get it right, some of the biggest rewards can come from that.
Yeah, I agree. And you've also got to sometimes put yourself in the shoes of the teenager. I think sometimes, I know this happened to me a lot, particularly when I was in WA. I had very male heavy classrooms, and I was dealing with a lot of other things with them as well. But they can be entitled. They can have this sort of air of, I guess, knowledge sometimes, but also they're at an age where they are intrinsically selfish. They're at an age where they, and I've worked with senior ones, they are at a stage in their life where they're trying to work out not only who they are, but also where they fit in the world around them. So, we've all been teenagers. I think if we think back on who we were as teenagers, none of us were necessarily our best selves as teenagers. So it's also being, you've got to have those boundaries and respect, but you've also got to have a level of respect for them, I think, too, in what they're going through and the challenges that face them in today's age, when we've also got so much technology, so much access to information, good and bad, information to and access to different sources of influence on our young people. And they're trying to work out who they are and where they fit in the world, which I think is a really big challenge for anyone. But I think particularly for young people in today's age, that's the world seems so huge, and what's their little piece of it. So yeah, it's a challenge, but I think there's also a lot of respect that can be built from them, and also in learning from you as well.
Agreed. Very well said.
Actually, yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I think one
I
of
feel
my
like you're
favorite.
leading into that idea of being like, the more trauma informed you are about, a student's place in the world, and sort of how it's played out for them, and what they're currently going through as well, just in general, which obviously TFA does a whole lot of awesome training for. Well, for us, the Berry Street model that we were able to participate in, I think that understanding really helps you deal with all those sorts of things when you have the average teenager in the schools that we get placed in TFA having presenting with those kinds of outlooks and or perspectives.
Yeah. And I would also say that like in the context that like I was teaching into, like I knew a lot about agriculture on the East Coast, but I hadn't really spent much time in WA. I didn't really know how it worked over there, and but all the students I was teaching, most of them grew up on farms in the WA wheat belt. And so my classroom, I learned so much from my students. So yes, technically I'm the teacher in the room. I'm the one, presenting the lessons, managing the classroom, all that sort of stuff. But there is also the ability to learn so much from your students. And I think it's really powerful when you have that two-way street of learning where you're open to learning from them just as much as they are open to learning from you.
Nicely said, both of you. I never laughed as much as I think I did in my first year of teaching as well. Like, teenagers are hilarious. I sort of compared toddlers and teenagers, like they're quite comparable, those two ages. A lot of like egotism, and they're trying to fight, really assert their independence, but they're also creative and humorous and sort of quite deeply in search of a connection. So, you can
Absolutely.
really feel that, just like a toddler as well, that they really want you to like them. And I've never met a teenager that doesn't want to learn. They might put up all sorts of barriers around that because of their experience of education or their identity about who they are. But when you actually teach them and they start to realize that they have a brain and that brain can be used and can be empowering, no student I've ever found is truly resistant to education. They're resistant to the system or to the feeling of not being a learner, but and I don't think that's ever changed across any cohort of kids I've ever taught. From the rowdiest of classroom to Year 12 literature, it's been the same. But yeah, they're phenomenally funny and outrageous sometimes. And since I've stopped teaching, I now do not know any current music. Where when I'm in the classroom, like I'm so up to date with pop culture and like where things are at in society, where now I'm, in my own little middle-aged bubble. So I find that bloody fabulous working with teenagers in that way. There's a few questions in the chat that I think I'll merge into one, and it's questions around what is the support like in the program? But I might even start that question a bit earlier. Can you tell us a little bit about, once you were accepted into the program, what was the process around placement, relocating, what school you were allocated to? And then I might even get you to talk a little bit about the pre-study and working through NII, and then we'll talk about support in the program. So part one, you've been accepted into the program. What was your experience of what happened next?
Do you want to start this one off, Kate?
Sure.
Okay.
So when I got accepted into the program, and I was the territory manager, the person who did all the phone calls to sort of work out where I was, what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, all that sort of stuff. She was so incredible, and I was I would be midweek going, oh my God, have I made the right decision? Is this the right thing to do? And I'd just call her and she'd be like, right, okay, we're having a wobble. That's okay. And she'd talk me through it. And it was she was just amazing. And I don't think I would have persisted through the initial stages had I not had that sort of support and hand holding at that point in time. And also the challenge is that I'm based in Queensland, and TFA, don't think it's changed, but at that point in time didn't place in Queensland. They placed every state but. And so I had options on where I wanted to go. Initially, my options, like the ones that my preferences, I think the ones that I put forward, I think I went with Tassie and WA, not because they're the furthest places away, but just because they were the places that I felt sort of most connected to in wanting to go and see and explore and spend a bit more time there. And so from that, ended up in WA. And so the WA team and the WA Department of Education, I would say, is quite good and quite supportive in wanting to get people into teaching in WA. So being able to like relocate and all that sort of stuff, there's like loads of checklists, but it was all pretty straightforward and pretty easy to do. And the Department of Education really wanted to, they covered my relocation and provided like a regional officer housing and all that sort of stuff. So there was lots of support given in that way. And because I was moving regional, there was more options again. I think like DJ had quite a few dramas, particularly when it came to finding housing initially. But I was lucky in that being regional, remote, those services were kind of provided in some way. So yeah, got into the program, then had NII. So I think in that we did just about 4 units of uni in about 6 weeks before Christmas. It is, they do say intensive in the title. They're not lying when they say that. I think and in that as well, we had prac. So DJ and I even actually did prac together down in Victoria. So we got flown down to Victoria and did that at Bacchus Marsh, which was a great experience. I think the thing that TFA did really well for us was connected our cohort in ways that allowed us to feel like we had people we could sort of talk to about the process as we went through it. Because yeah, even though nobody is having the same experience as you, it makes so much difference to know that there are other people going through something similar. So yeah, NII, had prac, finished off NII and then moved to WA and met the rest of the WA cohort, which was really lovely. We'd been lucky that we'd in our NII groups online, we'd actually already been in our WA cohort, so we already kind of knew some familiar faces, and it was nice to actually meet these people in person. And then from there, they give you a bit of a break from assessments until you sort of settle in, get through term 1, get through term 2, and then you're back into sort of doing regular assignments and connecting with your cohort. You do your mid-year intensive and regional intensives and those sort of things while you go through. And did I miss anything?
No.
That sounds pretty thorough.
DJ, do you want to now talk about school support?
Yeah, I can. I mean, if we're just talking about supports in general, like
just support
school, I mean, really, I think you've absolutely given me the question I love answering the most. Is just what TFA provided by setting up this program to have on the ground support the way it does is really, I think, for me personally, was the deciding factor between my success and my failure in this program. And I know that Kate's probably going to smile a bit, maybe in a bit of jealousy as well, about my my TLC was, Are we allowed to name drop in here? Is that cool? Or are we not?
A name drop.
Gary Dagg. If anyone ever encounters this man at any point in their educational career / TFA experience, you'll know what I'm talking about. An absolute legend around the Southwest and the education department. As just an excellent mentor for me and all of my other cohort, my colleagues, or I guess peers. He was fantastic. really what it means to be a good coach is definitely his practice, and like making the place feel a whole lot more welcoming, because I think it's quite not a unique, but quite a universal experience for people that go into more regional and remote places, or smaller towns, or cities or settlements than they're used to or what they've come from, that they can be quite insular sometimes. And I think having people on the ground that are like, checking the pulse with how you're doing, not just in your results or your like teaching, but also like how are you going, like as a person, as a human being. I think that human touch is so important. And TFA provided that tenfold. And I think as well, like the school I was placed in, I also was really lucky that I got a good mentor. I know that some people didn't experience that same sentiment, that their mentors in their schools were not so great. But I think the fact that they had, and these are cohort peers that I have spoken to about numerous times, that if they didn't have a good in-school mentor, you sure as hell that their TFA mentor was on the beat and ready to back them up and make sure that they were doing okay and checking in with them. And I really, really can't stress enough how important that was for me successfully getting through my first 2 years of teaching and completing the program. So
yeah, and sorry, I'm just going to jump in there. While I was the first and like only to date associate at my school, so I was sort of like having to in ways teach some of the staff, I guess, how to mentor me and all that sort of stuff, which had its own challenges. I was lucky that I was near enough to another town, Northam, where they have a really big, like where they have a lot of TFA associates, both alum and currently going through the program. And so I was able to sort of like use my study days sometimes to go down to Northam, connect with peers also going through the program, or connect with peers that have been through the program, and even just like observe their practice and sort of connect with them about what the process entailed. So I think the TFA network is large, as Rebecca said at the top, and generally I think you can find someone nearby who is able to support in some way.
Yeah, and I'd say even for some people that might get through the initial parts of the program and then get put in an absolute it's isolated place somewhere, or some sort of placement that's very, very far away from others. Like we had group chats going in our WA cohort that kept us all afloat. We had a lot of that connection just remotely as well. That I feel a lot of people used as a bit of a crutch when they were going through some really trialing and tricky times. So yeah, that was huge. Formulating that culture and that kind of community, through the experiences of that national intensive and also the regional intensives that you do, over the 2 years, are super important, I would say, for the success of people in the program, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to reiterate a few things that you both mentioned. So TFA differentiates, I suppose, from other programs that may similarly be an apprenticeship style model of learning how to become a teacher alongside study. One, because we've been doing this model for 16 years. So when it comes to knowing what works to support associates and support school, we've got 16 years of experience in making sure that we place people in schools where there are alum and there is community, and there are schools that are aligned with TFA and they're willing and wanting to support TFA teachers in the schools. You're part of a cohort, which is something that differentiates from other programs, and that cohort becomes your community across the 2 years. And you're given the school mentor, and you're also given the TLC. So thank you for mentioning that you actually get 2 coaches that regularly work with you on your teaching practice. So in the chat, there was some questions about how do you deal with being thrown in and all the challenges of being completely new and working with young people who may push back and be challenging students. You've got 2 very strong pillars of support. So the school support, and then also the TLC, and then the wider TFA community who continue to be your support as you become alum. So I still connect with alum who did the program with me 16 years ago. They're still part of my education network of support, and people who are doing fabulous things that encourage and push me to keep thinking systematically about how to improve, this schooling system of ours that we're within. So I'm just mindful of time. Thank you. There are a few more questions coming through the chat, but I might just end on this one. I'm sure many of us really, really would love to get to dinners or afternoon tea if you're in WA. So my final question, Kate and DJ, is the people who have given up their time tonight to attend this webinar may be considering applying for TFA. What would be one bit of advice that you would give them for applying and going through the process of selection?
Am I starting this one, Kate, or you?
Oh, I'm still thinking, but if you're ready to go, you can start.
Yeah, I want to make sure that this is the quintessence of the advice that I would give. What's the one thing I would say is most important as a piece of advice? I think it's going to sound very cliche, but I really do think that you just really need to approach this program with a bit of it's I would nearly want to say it's like be open-minded, but it's so much more than that. I think it's like be okay with being the least educated person in the room about education for a while, like be humble and be able to take advice. Really allow yourself to be a vessel for other people, because I think TFA does give and supports, people by providing so much mentorship and so much community and so much connectedness while you're trying to do this full-on experience that is possibly, for most people, one of the trickiest and most rewarding things they'll do in their life, potentially. God, listen to me. You've just got to, be open to all and everything, and I think that will give you the most success in this experience, is if you're willing to have a go, but be really, really receptive to new perspective, be humble, be reflective, I think that's lots of things now that I've said, not just one, but open-minded, be an open vessel.
Yep. Thank you, Deja.
I would say I've got a couple things. One, I think, at the end of my first year, we finished that at RI, the end of it was the start of our second year. And my main reflection from the first year was, I've done hard things, and I've done hard things before, and I can do hard things again. I think the first year in particular really, really challenged me in a lot of ways. And I think the growth that I got from that has really set me up to be adaptable and resilient and capable in ways I probably hadn't given myself credit for previously. So I would say, yes, it is hard, but also it opens your mind to sort of being able to, I guess it sort of opens you up to being, I guess, as Jadija was saying, open-minded and this sort of open vessel. I would also say, on my laptop screen, I have a little sticky note, and on that I have some just a little advice. And sometimes it'd pop up and the kids would see it and they'd be like, "Miss, you're not allowed to say that." But it was two things: have a go and don't be a dick. And I think those things, and I think those things as well are also just grounding in the process. If you're going to come across some hard things, but it's important to have a go. And even though there are going to be times where you are challenged and you want to maybe stand up and crack a tantrum or say stuff you're not supposed to and all that sort of stuff, I think it's important to also remain humble in that and don't let that side win, but learn from that experience, because you're going to be working with people who have been teaching way longer than you. You might not always agree with their style or how they do things or their point of view, but they also have some knowledge to share, and they've also been doing the job, like for longer than you. There's still something you can learn from that as well. So I think, yeah, you can do hard things, have a go, and be humble. I'll rephrase it.
Hey, DJ, thank you so much for giving up your teacher time, your precious teacher time, to come online tonight and have a chat with us. There's
Thanks very much for having us.
There's a few links that Callie has thrown into the chat that will be helpful if you're interested in registering for any of the future webinars. And if you want to have any one-on-one chats with any of the recruiters, please email that address that's dropped into the chat. They'll be able to answer any of your questions, especially if they were specific in the chat tonight and we weren't able to get to them. And an email will be sent out after this webinar with links and a recording, so if you'd like to re-listen. And a reminder that our next round of applications are closing in a few weeks. Let me get that date. Callie, was it August 3rd? I think, yes, thank you. I think I've got that date right. August 3rd. Fabulous. Thank you for the evening, everybody. Look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at our assessment days. Take care and good night.